Okay, so today we're going to talk about something. I think that it is the simplest concept, yet so complex to actually introduce or set up expectations for. And that is the mysterious note that should be left on a customer's account. When do you leave it? Why do you leave it? Why is it so important? And the reason why I want to talk about it is because I think that there's an opportunity for the people who have to write the notes, which should really be all of us, to understand why you have to write the note. So then maybe they'll write the notes. Does that mean, it's not rocket science, right? I think that that's the main thing. So anywho, we're going to talk about that today. My name is Ty. I am the founder and CEO of cxcollective, and I've been in customer experience for 20 plus years. And I like to work with companies to help them evolve and grow. That's the simplest way to put it. Let us do Jordan first.
Hey, y'all. I'm Jordan. I'm a CX operations manager here at the Collective. I've been in the CX space for over 6 years now, helping build and scale support teams, and excited to talk about internal notes today.
Wonderful, wonderful. And let's go to Sasheen.
Hey, everyone. I'm Sasheen. I am the CX strategist with the Collective. Been with these lovely people for over a year now, and in the customer experience industry positions, all the things, for over 20 years. And I am excited for this conversation because I have had my share of why these things are important and what catastrophic things can go wrong without notes. So very excited for this conversation.
And then Miss Chloe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chloe. I'm also the CX operations manager at the Collective. I've been successfully building and managing customer service teams for almost 10 years now in a wide variety of industries. And I've learned so much over the years, and I'm excited to share some of that knowledge and also continue to learn from you guys as well.
Beautiful. All right. The subject is internal notes. Now, different systems call them different things. Some just call them notes. Some may call them comments. Some of the use cases that we'll talk about today, I think, are going to be ones between a tool like Shopify and like your CRM, be it a Gorgeous or Zendesk, Customer, Gladly, whatever it is, where you need to actually put a summary of the conversation, why it's important. So I'll tell you from my perspective that it is a pet peeve of mine to go into a customer engagement and not see a note. And I know that the thought can sometimes be, well, you can see what I did, right? And that's true. If you go back and trace the steps, you can see what a person has done. But what you're missing is, why did they do it, right? And there's always a story that goes to it. I went above and beyond for this customer for this reason, or I declined this customer for that reason. And nobody knows that because I lived in here. And that's one of the purposes, I think, of keeping a really good note and detail for the next person who's going to come in and may have to deal with that person. All right, so I have a question. How can taking, really good notes help manage expectations and provide better customer service?
It's essential when you have a team, because there's a difference between the sole customer service agent working with a small business. And even in those cases, it's important to do. But because that person is kind of the sole person doing the work, there's a intellectual, what do I always say, institutional knowledge around that, where that person already knows what's going on because they know the customer. But when you're dealing with a team, it's essential, because if you have returning customers, if you have rogue customers, if you have customers trying to push against policies, any type of scenario you can think of, if you don't have, not only within the ticket, but the customer itself, if there's no communication internally, then people are going to be doing different things with that customer. And then it tips the customer off that this is not a business that's aligned. And so it really exposes the business in a lot of ways when there's lack of information internally.
Yeah. I don't want to jump in yet. I mean, I can, but it looks like Jordan might be getting ready. Yeah.
I think too, whether it's a big team or a small team, if you have a big global team, it's super important to have internal notes. But even I I found myself, like today I was going and answering tickets for the beta of a company, and I found myself just like default to leaving internal notes because I'm like, I'm going to forget this if I like when I come back to it. And so I think like it's important for like yourself and then for your team as well.
That's a really good point. Sorry if you guys heard my music. I was trying to put my phone on do not disturb, just being human. Here we go. The point that you made just now about the note is not necessarily just for the next person. It can be for you too. And here's something that I tell our clients. Let's say that we finish a config for their CRM and we're done and we're handing it over. I tell them we're going to give you the notes to that configuration as if we were going to maintain it. Because once you walk away from that particular situation, you're not going to remember everything. So a good note will help you to be kind of to jog your memory, like, oh, that's why I did that. And sometimes it even helps in that moment to say what you won't do. It's almost like it's scary to say you're telling yourself, but think about like if you were to say, if this comes back again, what do I need to know? What would I want to tell myself again if I have to touch this customer? I think that's a good way to think about it. Chloe, do you have anything to add on this one before we go to the next one?
Yeah, I think it's a great training tool. For a lot of my teams, what I do is when there are new agents that come in, I'll manually assign them a few tickets, but I'll leave internal notes of how to resolve it, what to look for, and just the process. Mm-hmm. And it seems to, work really well because like you guys said, you can always go back and refer to it again.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, help me help you, right?
Yeah. I've done that with some complicated customer situations where you may have that documented somewhere, but that customer comes up again. And then you have to like go, oh yeah, that's Sally. And she was rough. Yeah. She's coming back. And then you go, okay, what was that ticket that we had to go and explain? And then you have all these internal things because you've taken a log of whatever. It's essential, and it's very helpful for training because you can then show that to the team and go, here's one of our difficult customers, or here's one of our challenging situations. And it's just really, really good for that.
You know what else? Another use case for like an internal note of sorts that's not necessarily assigned to a customer profile, or what happened in say like your in the back end of your website or your online shop, but is keeping a note of things that happened that day, just like 3 to 5 bullet points. You'll be surprised if you're going through life, you're just going, and then you're looking back at the metrics and you're like, why was volume so low that day? Or why was volume so high that day? Or why was handle time so long that day? And then you can pull up something that says, oh, it was because we had these issues, or this person was out, and you realize that person is really critical to your metrics or KPIs. So that's just another like bonus use case in my opinion. But my question for you guys is, how do we know what kind of content or information is important enough to leave on an internal note?
I think any sort of exception, if you're going to make some sort of exception for the customer, you need to put why. If you needed approval for it, just the details of it.
I think like you can over-index on like including things like a TMI, I think is okay here. I think like, I don't know if this is going to come later in a question, but I think like it's also very important to train your team. Don't say anything mean about a customer in an internal note, because man, the times you accidentally mean to leave an internal note and it goes to the customer, or they request like through GDPR stuff, like all their data, like just be nice to the customer. And like, it's a good precedent anyway to like set with your team, like don't be mean to the customer internally.
That's such a good point. I've had someone do that on accident before in the past. It did not go over well. That's a very good point.
Yeah. That is good.
That's a good example of catastrophic, because that's what I mean. It's like if a poor customer has been tagged a certain type of customer or whatever word, that can just go left very fast. And yeah, that's not good. I think the kind of content that's important is making sure that you're documenting the situation. And like you say, Ty, like the why, why something happened or what we're not seeing in the ticket. Mm-hmm. And making sure that's agreed upon in the process of internal notes. I think there should also be a procedure for internal notes, because there's somebody that's going to put a note and say, this customer was sad and that's it. Right. And that's all.
Yeah.
versus somebody who's going to give you the whole backstory of why the person was sad and what happened. And like, you'll that person understands what the importance of notes is versus somebody who just puts a couple words and that's it. So there has to be some level of agreed upon communication internally so people understand what's going on, for sure.
And this is just me being me, it's not everybody, but I am a person who does really well with bullet points. If you send me a long message of paragraphs, I'm going to skim it. And that's going to be pretty much all you're going to get. But if you break up that information into digestible chunks like bullet points, I can absorb it all. That's just how my mind works, right? So I think to Sashin's point in procedures and teaching people how to add the note, when I was in middle school, we used to do current events: who, what, when, where, why, how. That I think that's a real, like, you're going to know who, right? Because you're on their profile. You'll know what, if you're tracking properly, what did they contact you for, which everybody should be doing. You'll know when they contacted you because there's a timestamp. You'll know where they contacted you, meaning the channel, because it's right there, right? So the question is, what did you do? How did you do it? Why did you do it? And you'll be surprised at, once you have that in front of you, to the point of everyone here, even if you look back, you're going to be grateful that you took that level of detail. I cannot tell you how many times I've looked back on my own note and said, what is this? Almost like I was someone else. Like, what was I thinking when I wrote this? Like, literally have that conversation in my head. It's crazy. So do you guys think that it's even possible to remember all the details if you don't include a note?
No. That's a very fast no. Because especially when you're dealing with high volume.
Yeah.
No. Nope.
Mm-mm. Even low volume, right?
Yeah.
And then what, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. A tool that I like to use, I love to record videos that will kind of summarize what happened. And I don't know how many companies are up for that, but what I'll do is I'll link the tool that we like to use. I'll put it in the description of this video if anybody wants to check it out. But we lean on it a lot. And it helps so much. I mean, even if I put in a request ticket or a help ticket with a vendor, I typically will record a video because I may be trying to explain something that's going to get totally lost. So maybe that's a consideration too. Like, maybe part of that procedure could be, or just record a short video and say what you did, why you did it, in case the next person, and then also what you recommend next. So if you have a problematic customer, someone who may be abusing the system, like Jordan and I were talking about this scenario via messaging yesterday, where if you have a very lenient or flexible return policy, what happens when you get someone who abuses it? That's a prime case for like having good internal notes, right? Because that person could have, requested a return within the guidelines, and the decision was made either not to authorize that return or to say this is the last time that person can purchase, right? So if you don't leave a note around why this decision was made, when that person comes back in to game your system, if Sashin gets it, she won't know, right? She's going to follow the process or the procedure. So it's really like a kind of like a way to really help us help you, I guess, is the way to say it.
Another note on that is the high touch customer service clientele. If you're not in a space where you have a physical product, but you have a service or a membership or something like that, internal notes are essential, because the expectation is that client is being, cared for, and attention is being, paid to that customer. And so taking careful notes, if they're part of a service, even in spaces where it's like non-for-profit stuff or, very sensitive situations like that, those internal notes are vital, because they can, you can become in a space of liability So those are really important times when you're having kind of that high touch communication with the customer and having to know more about them than that transactional nature of their purchasing something that one time or what have you. It's essential, it's definitely essential in those cases for certain businesses.
Question for you guys. Where should internal notes be placed? I ask this because I think about the use case of your website, wherever your orders are processed. The note from your CRM, because there should be an integration, pie in the sky, should be an integration, but you'll have your internal note that is specific likely to a particular engagement, a particular ticket. There's also the opportunity to add a note to the customer's profile. Using the example that I gave a moment ago, where I was talking about what Jordan and I were dealing with, if there's a customer that shouldn't be allowed to do something, that would go onto their profile. But I think that there's also an opportunity to make a note on the profile and wherever orders are housed or processed, as well as an opportunity to make notes on the particular order in question, if that all lines up, right? Whatever your service or whatever the case may be. Does anybody have like an opinion on that one, a use case, a story around how having notes in those various places really helped you to help a customer, or either hindered you from being able to help a customer because you didn't know?
I think for me too, and this kind of goes into the semantics of like what's an internal note. I think like as much as you can get that integration with your CRM and make them actual like fields instead of just like, I know most tools like Zendesk, Intercom, they have like an option to leave like an internal note on the profile that's just a text field, but it's hard to like do stuff with that data and like be consistent. So at previous companies, we've had like, is a VIP customer, like that's like a tag or like a field.
Yeah.
And so you can easily see that across your CRM and how you're talking to customers on like the order page, all of that. And then it's like more reproducible. And like, it's just, you just select that option instead of, because I find too, sometimes like what gets put in that field of like just the free form text kind of gets lost and not prioritized. But having it systematic, I think, is the way to go.
I definitely agree with what Jordan's saying. If you can have a cohesiveness across systems, it makes it so much easier for everybody to know who and what is going on. But I've been in circumstances where sometimes it was over-engineered, and like certain information had to be in one, the order platform, another note had to be in the inventory platform, then we had to do something else in the CRM. So it can almost just be too much. I think the strategy there was to make sure whomever's in what system knows what happened. It may be the same node. It may be, that whole, like if they don't have the possibility to integrate everything, then that's where you have that duplication of note, but being very strategic about the what and the why, but as much as, like Jordan's saying, as much as cohesiveness is possible and integrations, that's key.
Yeah. Before I add anything, Chloe, do you want to jump in or are you good?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different perspective. I think it depends on your team size, because I have a very, very high volume client and there's about 60 agents right now. So it's necessary to leave the internal notes in every single platform because not everyone is checking just the ticket or just the profile. So I think it depends on maybe the team size or, something like that as well.
Yeah, I think that's good too. And integrating the systems is good. Using a tool like Zapier is good to try and push that information if the system that you have is not able to send that information over. I think that is definitely important because to Chloe's point, when you do have a large team, like I feel like the bigger you go, the more, and this is not profound or anything, it's just fact, but the larger you grow, the more structured you have to be because there are more opinions around what is the right thing to do. And those opinions will run the gamut. So in order to just be clear, let's just all say the same thing, right? This is what an internal note looks like. And that's just that on that. I need you to do it. And then that's the end. Jordan, you brought up something that kind of stuck with me that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And I don't have a question prepared, but just thinking out loud. You mentioned like systematizing in some way the note, right? I'm going to go way back 200 years ago when I wonder if this company's still around. When I used to work for Office Depot, this is literally, I was 19 years old, no joke. I started there at 18, so I was about 19. Introduced a tool called Click to Coach. I don't know where they are, right? But it was like profound cutting edge technology at the time because you could record the screen. And it was beneficial to quality because the quality team, not only did they listen to the call, but they could see everything that you did. I'm sure there are tools like that. I haven't seen any in recent history, but I'm sure that there are some like that. But when you talk about systematizing like a note, I think you might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're tying it to like customer type specific special situation for the profile versus customer engagement exception. Because I think what we kind of said is the exceptions are more so what we really want to have the detail on. But if you help a customer and you help them within the norm, it's just a return. Do you still need to leave a note? And if you leave a note and it's within the norm, what does that note say?
Yeah, I feel like if it's just cut and dry, like they have returned, you process it. I don't necessarily think you need to leave a note as long as like hopefully your system is tracking automatically number of returns, like ideally. But if not, then maybe I would leave a note. I mean, it never hurts to leave a note, but in terms of like being efficient and getting through things, I think like cut and dry interactions, if it's like one or two responses and nothing's going to come back, then you don't necessarily need to.
What's your opinion on if it's an email ticket, whether or not you need to leave a note on an email ticket?
I'm curious what would make that different than a chat?
A chat? Oh, nothing different from email or chat. Good point. Versus let's say email chat. Do you need to leave a note on an email or a chat versus a phone call?
Yeah, I mean, I think if all the text is there and like somebody coming and reviewing the ticket later can see everything, then no. But like, yeah, I guess I've avoided phone support as much as I can in my life. So most of my thinking is between different text-based chats.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear like on the phone side of things, I guess.
Okay, I got it.
I got it on the phone and the scenario of the return, going back to what you initially said. So in the space where you have a kind of a lack of transparency on returns with people requesting returns through your CRM ticketing system, I've seen spaces where there's not a return there. A lot of people are using like tools to do returns now but if you don't have that type of tool, it's important to document the kind of the process or the status of the return, because you're having to check other systems to make sure that the return comes in. If it's not all, if you're remote, especially having to check a warehouse or having to check a third party, that's where those important notes come in. Because if you're saying the customer requested this date within policy, then you saw that they returned it at this date, and then there's like out of policy, like, do we still do that? Do we not? And then what time did the warehouse get it? Did they process it? Do we see it in the inventory? Then, here they come looking for their refund. Right? Like that's where those are really important notes. Or if it's an exchange, making sure that the documented is what do they want? It's may not always be transparent in the ticket of what they're looking for to exchange it to. Is there a difference in pricing? So there's a lot of room for that as far as notes and documenting exactly what the transaction's about when you're talking about certain, issues that come up. When it comes down to phones, I've had clients that didn't have any any type of internal note system with their phones, which was interesting. It goes back to what you were saying. When there's no notes, you're just listening to phone calls and you have no idea what happened. You know what I mean? There's no way to know what happened with that customer, and they could be calling 2, 3, 4 times. So that there's a lot of room for error in phone trainings and phone systems when you're not dealing with proper notes and note taking for the customer.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because as I'm thinking about it, if you don't have internal notes for the phones and you're just listening to the recording, you have to take the agent's word for what they're saying. They could very easily be telling the customer, okay, I'm issuing you a refund, but on the back end, it might be a totally different process. They might have to do a reshipment and then, make a return, and like process-wise, it might be very different. But for ease to just tell the customer, hey, I'm just doing a return for you.
One thing that you guys know, I don't believe in like hierarchy or anything like that, but I do think that there are different roles have more responsibility. I'll say it that way. So for example, if you, even though you might have an email chain, that could be a really long email chain. It could be a really long chat chain. So summarizing it is so beneficial, because imagine you get on the call the next message comes in from said customer, and you're like, well, the last thing they said is reach out if you need any help. Well, what did they do? Now you're going back and you're trying to read. So if we start talking workforce management stuff, we're talking about a long handle time for a situation that could have been summarized by the last SME who touched it, right? Here's what I did. Here's why I did it. Here's what I think should happen next. Summarize it. And it's really like, it's helping you, it's helping the next person, because remember, like if it feels better for you to say you're helping yourself, just think about if you get that same inquiry or you get that same customer again, you're going to be like, oh no, I would rather know. No problem. Write your own notes to save yourself, and then maybe it'll just help someone else.
Something that just, I feel like we talk about AI every episode, but I've seen some tools now that do, like it's a service where they'll summarize everything in the conversation as an internal note. And so I haven't used that. I don't know how good they are or would be, but like if that works well, like that could save everybody a lot of time.
You know, our note taker does that. And I just sent something yesterday to our 2 team members who help out with like our after note, our after meeting notes and things like that. And I was like, look at the summary, but for some reason I'm afraid. I'm still afraid to like lean on it. And it just kind of reminds me of like, you know, how there's a certain generation of people who don't trust online banking. I realize that I have now become that that group, because I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it has enough. But maybe eventually I'll learn to trust it. But that is good, because I don't know why it's so difficult to summarize, but I think it comes down to really not being able to answer, 1, why is this important? 2, what do I need to capture? And 3, where do I need to put it? Because it's easy to say it's all there, like just look for it. No, I could totally look for it, but I've got literally 3 minutes to focus on this thing. So because you know the most, tell me everything I need to know. Then I can give you an answer and everybody's happy, versus me spending 15 minutes trying to track stuff down. Or the next person, right? Because that just ends up that, you know, backlogs, high queues, high wait time. We'll go into all that other stuff too at another time, but just thinking about that. And I meant to show this because we were talking about efficiency, but we kind of already had that conversation. But it was just like, I think internal notes can make the process more efficient, I believe. We talked about some don'ts, right? And Jordan, you gave a really good use case for why you should not speak negatively about customers, especially if they request all of their information, so forth and so on. Any other things that we should avoid putting into internal notes outside of insults?
Any proprietary information that the business has got going on, that's something else that can be a huge no-no. I think that with customer service tickets and inquiries, you know, you have your standard information that you need to know, but anything outside of that, anything that's sensitive, especially like when it comes down to the business practices, recipes, whatever you want to call it, you know, kind of make sure that there's boundaries around what needs to be in there and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Also, credit card information. If you are a medical company, and like just save yourself and just don't do it. You know, social security, any personally identifiable information, just don't do it. That's my opinion. All right, y'all. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here. Are there any additional thoughts on internal notes, do's, don'ts, best practices, advice, insights as people who are responsible for reviewing these notes and taking action, or for teaching people how to review notes or to take action on inputting notes? Anything that you guys feel like is relevant to share that we didn't cover today?
If I could ask a quick question, I'd love to know, like, something I've struggled with is getting the team to actually consistently use internal notes? It's one thing to say
Yeah.
they're important, and I think we all agree on that, but
Yeah.
how have y'all seen success getting your teams to see that?
I have to say that it hasn't always been successful, because without people really understanding the why behind it, or how to do it. Because I think that at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, there's will versus skill. They're willing to do it. They just don't understand why it's so important and how to do it. And that's what I'm hoping this conversation will be about, because I've seen the most success with getting notes added when you gave a story about why it's important. Right. So trying to use the WIFM, what's in it for me perspective, I think helps a lot.
Yeah.
Hopefully after this, everyone will do it.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about that. And then also, as far as just an ongoing training practice.
Yeah.
Use cases of, this was a great example of somebody using notes and roping that into your training on a consistent basis to keep people in fresh, that these things need to happen during their shifts.
Yeah.
It'll get people adapted over time, and really giving the great examples and really giving the bad examples, because the bad examples are going to show why. The good examples are going to show why, because of the outcomes that happen with the customer. So that's really important too.
I think that's really good. I think, start from the beginning, develop good habits from the beginning during training. And then if you need to, make it part of QA.
Definitely make it a part of QA, like 100%. That has to be a success criteria. Yeah. You need to leave a note. The question is, what do I need to leave? And that's the hard thing. It's like, just leave one. We got to, hopefully after this, like I said, we have given some good examples. As usual, I appreciate you guys so much. This was another good conversation of bringing up things that I think nobody wants to ask out loud, but that question around what is a good internal note is a real one. And I'm glad that we were able to have that discussion and hopefully encourage other people to use them properly. But I will see you on the next one. All right. Thanks, y'all, and have a lovely weekend. Talk to you soon.